the second webinar of the Sigma series on delivering value with public services. Today's webinar, as you are very much aware, is focused on governance and coordination of public services. We cannot overemphasize the importance of having strong governance mechanisms in place, and I would say a flexible, fluid code we can deliver value, we can deliver efficient, effective services to users. There is, of course, an emphasis on design aspects. There is, of course, an emphasis on the most visible side of public services. But the importance of an efficient, effective backstage, if you want, is also a key element for governments to keep delivering and committing to the needs and the expectations of users, citizens, or businesses alike. My name is Bruno Monteiro. I'm very much pleased to invite my colleague Nikis, that coordinates the area of public services, to step in and share with us some welcoming words as usual. Nick.
Thank you so much, Bruno, and also from my side and from Sigma's side in general, a very warm welcome indeed to all of you this morning. Numbers are still increasing of colleagues joining in, and we expect quite some more to join. Nevertheless, we would like to start quite punctual on time, since we all have a busy agenda this morning and a lot of ground to cover. Also, big and warm welcome to all our speakers, panelists this morning. Bruno will introduce the agenda and the speakers furthermore. But let me just say from on my behalf that really pleased indeed to offer this second session in a series. So we plan in the course of the year and a bit longer, like 6 of these seminars, webinars in total, covering the wide spectrum of what we tend to call in Sigma terms and terminology, service delivery and digital government. We had the first session of these like a month ago, dealing with accessibility of services online and offline. We will have others to offer dealing with areas on digital wallet, areas on AI, also on satisfaction measurement. So follow us and you will see all of these topics coming and passing by. Saying all of this because what our final aim is, or one of our final aims is to organize these webinars, is on the one hand to showcase some very interesting stories from a technical, methodological, and practical point of view. So to really give interesting speakers a platform. On the other side, also to build a community, or to contribute to a community, being it online, but also hopefully in the future also that we have the chance in person. So with this, the second one, as Bruno said, on a very important topic, really on the backbone of delivering services and also on digital government, the whole infrastructure in terms of governance, in terms of setup, as we have seen this in many of the countries where we as Sigma are working, as really a core and a crucial part of the service delivery, where there is still some work to be done. Bruno will also present some of the figures on some of the work and insights that we have gained here. So really pleased with all the speakers, all the panel members. And we did also like to hand over to the friends and colleagues from the European Commission, DG NST, which is one of the 2 of our father or mother director generals in the Commission. So DG NST on the one hand, and of course we're also working in what we call the South, the MENA region. So with this, we're also working closely with DG MENA. But in this, please, Vasil and Helena, warm welcome. And I'm kindly handing over to Vasil for your intro words from the side of DG NST, European Commission. Please, Vasil.
Indeed. Good morning, everyone. And first of all, let me warmly greet you on behalf of DG NST, European Commission from Brussels. Indeed, our Deputy Head of Unit, Giulio Veneri, was supposed to be today with us and to greet you, but unfortunately he couldn't make it due to unforeseen circumstances. So I'm stepping in. I'm Vasil Zubaka, team leader for public administration reform in DG ENIST, and I'm also together here with my colleague, Elena Kovic, whom you know already. She is managing Sigma program on the Commission side. So for me, it is indeed a pleasure and also an honor to open this second Sigma webinar after a successful panel that we had in May on inclusion and accessibility of public services. But today we are here to discuss governance and coordination of public services. First of all, let me also congratulate Sigma colleagues for such an impressive panel today. We have OECD colleagues working on innovation with us. We have Secretary General Reform colleagues leading the way on public administration and governance with the member states. And we have also a Kosovo minister present today, which is, of course, for us a clear sign of the importance of this topic. And to begin with, of course, I would like to welcome the Minister from Kosovo on Digitalization and Public Administration. This shows commitment at the highest political level, and we are very much keen and eager to hear directly from you, dear Minister, on your experience advancing public administration reform in Kosovo. But before we continue with the discussion, let me first of all reaffirm the importance of the momentum for the enlargement. As you know, we recently had opening of cluster 1, so-called fundamental cluster with Moldova and Ukraine. At the same time, Montenegro is continuing with provisional closing of chapters of the EU acquis. Namely, Montenegro has now closed 16 chapters. Albania has recently met the interim benchmark assessment report, and Armenia, just in the recent election, reiterated its close ties to Europe. Moreover, in the Western Balkan region, we had recently EU Western Balkan Summit, and also in May, we had a commissioner visit, Commissioner Kos to Kosovo, to reiterate our support for the EU perspective of the entire region, and also to underline that it means that more reforms need to be delivered, reforms of good quality, and of course at increased accelerated pace. But in this regards, we would like to underline the strong public administration as part of the fundamentals of the EU accession requirements is, of course, the backbone of the process. Even though some enlargement countries make steady progress towards accession, we see that the capacity of public administration is an important factor that can accelerate on the one hand, but also slow down, on the other hand, the process in the long run. Now, talking about governance and coordination, we can say that it's easier to say than actually to do. They require political commitment, and they go beyond electoral cycles, and ownership that embraces a whole of government approach, not as an aspiration, but as a way of working. Working in a unit myself, in a unit of enlargement strategy and coordination here at the DG ENIST, I think we can clearly see that the first hands of the challenges we experience are related to coordination here internally, but of course also externally, and also with our candidate countries and potential candidates. This is why we believe that governance and coordination of public services are not merely technical or administrative concerns. They are decisive enablers of reforms. So with this, I would like to once again underline that we believe that our conversation today should go beyond coordination itself, because coordination is an instrument. What we want at the end of the day is, of course, accountable, effective, and value-based governance and public administration. Today's panel is a reflection on how we can support administration in being more responsible to citizens' needs, resilient in the face of change, and committed to the principles and values that define the European Union, namely democracy, the rule of law, integrity, and respect for fundamental rights. None of this can be achieved in isolation, as you perfectly know. One of the greatest strengths is indeed the power to learn from each other. Every administration has developed valuable experiences, innovative approaches, and practical solutions to common challenges. Creating opportunities to exchange those experiences allows us actually to avoid repeating mistakes, accelerate reform, and build lasting professional networks. This is why initiatives such as this panel today are so valuable. By bringing together practitioners, policymakers, and experts from the member states and enlargement partners, it creates a platform for mutual learning, peer exchange, and dissemination of good practices. So with this, I wish you, and I think all of us, a productive panel, engaged discussion, and many opportunities to build on today's lessons. Thank you very much. And with this, over to you, Bruno.
Thank you so much, Basil, and once again, thank you so much for DG Ernest for walking side by side with us, with the public administrations also that Sigma supports. And just to emphasize something that I think was pretty evident in Basil's intervention is that this is an organic process where we get live updates on the way we are approaching and changing public administration. Also, to emphasize this word of an organic process, we want to share with you the small article we published with key insights from the first webinar. We hope you can take a look, provide your feedback, engage with the text, share it to your networks. The whole idea is that we can go from event to event approach to build a series of webinars that can create a community across borders, exchange experiences, learn with each other. That's precisely the whole point of gathering here in this sequence of webinars. Very briefly, I'm very, very pleased to have today my colleagues from the OECD, Arnaud Preté and Emily Balbany. Arnaud is the head of unit of the Digital Innovation Public Services team. Emily is a policy analyst in the same unit. I will hand over to them so they can guide us through the work they have been doing in this area. And I know for a certainty that they will emphasize a very important instrument, and that is the OECD recommendation on human-centered public administrative services. As you know, this important instrument was presented in 2024, and I will dare to say that governance and coordination, being a means to an end, are across the whole recommendation, because I emphasize the governance should be rooted in democratic values and sustainability for the rule of law, these very strong principles. It also emphasized that governance and the design and the delivery of services, it's a shared responsibility across branches of government, which calls for a better coordination. The fact that we are confronted today with a strong digital effort do not mean governance and coordination has been solved automatically. Quite on the contrary, I will say that the bigger the powers we have at our disposal, the bigger the responsibility in having a strong governance. And as you can see, for instance, in the recommendation, digital public infrastructure or data governance, by definition, they call for a common long-term vision. They call for strong institutional arrangement, for delivery oversight. They call clearly for coordination and collaboration across different stakeholders inside the government to start with, but also in the whole ecosystem. And of course, when we are talking about digitalization, and if we don't want to get into the trap of, solutions that have a timestamp, we need to have flexible and long-term investment approaches, long-term funding, long-term responsibility in the way we discuss the sustainability of our solution. So I'm pretty sure this will stay across their interventions. Just an opportunity to emphasize the importance of this instrument. Arnaud and Emily, and the floor is yours. Once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Bruno. Dear Minister, dear AC colleagues, dear OECD colleagues and participants, thank you for welcoming us and inviting us today to speak and to make the connection across the work at the OECD and in the EC. I think we'll all agree that public services are at the core of interactions between citizens and government, and that they influence the well-being of citizens, but also they help reinforce the trust that citizens might have in government. And I'd like maybe to start with this point. The OECD released yesterday the report on the trust that shows that on average in OECD countries, um, only 40% of people report high to moderately high trust in national government. 43% report low or no trust. And we can observe that the trend is rather going down rather than going up. This makes public services even more important. Public services are a key driver of trust in government, and ensuring that people are satisfied with public services can help increase this trust. The trust survey also measured the satisfaction of users with different types of services: healthcare, education, administrative services. As you can see, it varies across services from 54% in healthcare to 68% in admin services. Admin services covering getting a driving license, getting an ID, renewing the ID. We can believe that 68% is a good score. I think we can also see that 32% of citizens do not say that they are satisfied with even public administrative services. And I think the standard and the golden rule is higher than 68. So a lot of progress to do still on administrative services. And what is very important then is to go deeper. Once we know that the satisfaction can be improved, we can look at the different drivers on which we can work to improve this satisfaction. So let me perhaps give the floor to Emily to go through some work we've done with the EU on this work before continuing the presentation on governance and coordination.
Thank you very much, Arnaud, and good morning to you all. So indeed, as Arnaud mentioned, the OECD Trust Survey has identified satisfaction with public administrative services as a key driver of trust. And we were very fortunate to undertake between 2023 and 2025 a project financed by the Technical Support Instrument of the European Commission, a project covering 10 EU member states to measure citizen satisfaction with public services. And the aim here was really for us to identify what is actually driving the satisfaction with services and therefore enhancing trust. And this project enabled us, through a population survey that we deployed across the 10 countries, to identify 9 key drivers of satisfaction that you see here on the screen, that presents drivers that have a statistically significant impact on the overall level of satisfaction of users who have experienced a public service. And when we think about today's theme, which is talking about strong governance and coordination, we can see that these key drivers really require strong governance and coordination across public administrative services. So let's just take a few to give an example. If you think about seamless services, so how services worked together, in order to ensure that services are working together across different administrations, there's a need to provide strong governance and coordination mechanisms for for different administrations. The same can be said, for instance, when you look at integrated services. So providing, for instance, the same information only once. Only with a strong coordination mechanism across different administrative services, as well as strong data infrastructure, for instance, this can be provided. And so what we're going to do with you this morning is give you a few examples of what countries have been doing to put in place these governance and coordination mechanisms across their administrations. So I hand it back over to Arnaud, please.
Thank you, Emily. I think this was important to again situate the importance of public services in trust and how the coordination and governance of public services can be very important in building the satisfaction with public services. Looking now more at specifically governance and coordination approaches in OECD member countries, We have studied this a number of examples and done a benchmark of OECD member countries based on the OECD recommendation on human-centered public administrative services. This is a recommendation adopted by all OECD member countries in 2024 that looks at different aspects around the strategic vision, the core foundations, seamless and accessible services, and measurement and engagement. It was responded by 37 countries, including 31 OECD member countries, but also 6 accession and non-members. I will after that present a number of benchmarks and data that are coming from this survey and that are really trying to measure the implementation of a recommendation on these aspects. First, we have to recognize that the institutional model across countries vary considerably. Central government plays an important role. This is the dark blue. And to try to understand how public administrative services are delivered across level of governments, we have asked countries which level is responsible for delivering 12 life events or public administrative services, from visa insurance, income tax, to national ID cards. What you can see from that is that, again, a majority of countries have a very centralized model where these services are delivered by the central government. That's the case in total 71% of countries, but that some national governments also remain very important. This shows that first, institutional models will vary considerably based on the institutional history of a country. And second, also, that there is no one-size-fits-all model, but of course there is always a variation of model with a required coordination across levels of government and across institutions. A very important enabler for this on this model is the steering. And on this, the OECD recommendation clearly highlights that it's important to clearly define roles and responsibilities for enabling human-centered service design and delivery. It's necessary to ensure effective oversight of how public administrative reform strategies are being implemented, coordinated across government agencies. What we can see is that responsibility is usually well defined, and in most cases, the responsibility is given to a public administration ministry or its equivalent. Other responsibilities or other possible leadership is also provided to center of government, to digital government ministries or agencies, and in some cases to line ministries. So here again, we can see that there is not one single institutional model for seeing improvements, even though there are some more emerging, I would say, institutions that lead that work. The most important is to have, again, this clear definition of roles and responsibilities. One of the key roles of a leading agency or its equivalent is to coordinate across agencies in the government. And here, what we've tried to observe is how many countries have designated a responsible body to lead and coordinate service delivery strategy and provide coordination and communication. What we can see here, based on the data, is that, again, 71% of countries have defined a cross-government committee responsible for public administrative services reform. Responsibilities of this committee can vary from enabling coordination, monitoring strategy, to setting standards, and also ensuring that the strategy is properly implemented across all its objectives. Usually, countries will have defined a central coordination bodies or committees that will be complemented by working groups that can be thematic or that can be based on the different objectives defined in the strategy. There are many examples that we can provide of such bodies. We have provided one here in Ireland, which is the Public Services Leadership Board. It's a high-level strategic body established in 2018, so with several years of experience, and that brings together senior officials that have a mandate and responsibilities to report, discuss, and make decisions on public services. The board is chaired by the Secretary General of the Department of Public Expenditure, Public Service Reform and Digitalization in Ireland, but it brings together his or her counterparts from the different ministries at the same level, so secretary generals or equivalent, to make sure that the discussion is informed, that there is accountability, and that decision can be made as part of the board. That's a very important body, again, to enable coordination, but also to steer the improvement and to ensure that the improvement happens across multiple services and multiple agencies. Another way also to push for a better coordinated services and stronger governance, if we move from coordination to more towards the implementation phase, is setting service standards. The OECD has recently published the Digital Government Outlook that looked at this availability of service standards. What you can see from this graph is that close to 90% of countries have set service standards that can ensure that the quality of services is consistent and that the priorities for service improvement are shared across the administration. Probably what is even more interesting here is that when we talk about standards, there is a variety of standards that can be on quality, that can be on service design, that can be on digital, that can be on use of data, etc., etc. So here there is at least one caveat, which is to make sure that the services are really shared and that the standards are really shared across the administration and that they are really strategic enough to embrace the entire cycle of public service design and delivery. I will share you also an example that is coming from France this time. France has created service standards that in that case are commitments from the public administration to users. I think it's very important to note that they are not only designed to improve the quality within the administration, but they are really something that is a commitment from the administration around a number of principles, timeliness, fairness, access to information and transparency, responsiveness, tailored services, but also ecological commitments in the delivery and design of public services. Of course, these services are very high level in terms of standards, but then there are decline into each agency around more precise indicators and practices. But they managed to build this framework of, I would say, a comprehensive framework and tool for governance and coordination across public services. To also foster this coordination and this alignment across the administration, there are also dedicated approaches that can be used. And one of the most probably common and I would say conducive one is the life event approach, on which Emily will say a couple of words to conclude our intervention.
Thank you, Arnaud. So indeed, you've heard about the different practices and mechanisms that countries have been putting in place across OECD and partner countries with regard to governance and coordination. But what we wanted to do was just give you a quick overview of what we have been seeing with regard to the life event approach, which really can be seen as a catalyst for strong governance and coordination. So firstly, what exactly is a life event? So a life event refers to a change in the circumstances of a user that creates a need to use a public administrative service or multiple services, and that may require coordination and integration between different service providers. So there are a variety of different life events that we as users experience over the course of our lives, and they vary in frequency. So there are certain life events that are sort of seen as positive life events, such as getting married, having a baby. There are other life events that also are more sensitive in nature, such as losing a loved one. And all of these events require multiple public services to work together in order to address users' needs. So why are countries actually adopting a life event approach? So firstly, the life event approach really ensures that users are placed at the center. By developing life event approaches, countries are starting from the user's experience, and so they are responding to the needs of the user, improving the clarity and the communication. Life events are also, as we're seeing across different OECD countries, supporting prioritization of reform efforts. And so very much focusing in on prioritizing resources on what services matter the most for users. But particularly also for this webinar today, the life events also help coordinate and integrate information, services, as well as processes in order to be able to deliver more seamless and accessible services. The Serving Citizens questionnaire that Arnaud has presented to you provides an overview of how countries across the OECD and partner countries are developing life event approaches. So here you will see that most countries have a life event approach in place, with a number of countries currently planning to implement this. And I know that this is also the case across Sigma countries. But what we've seen is that countries have different levels of maturity when it comes to developing their life event approaches. In some instances, we have seen a categorization or a grouping of countries with two different types of approaches. There are countries that are very much developing an approach that focuses on information groupings. So this is, for instance, ensuring that users have access to information on all the public administrative services that could be associated with their life event. In other instances, but which requires even stronger governance and coordination mechanisms to be put in place, countries are trying to adopt an integrated service approach. And this is very much where the administrative services associated with a life event are very much interlinked and connected so that a user has a very seamless journey going from one service to another. Let me give you an example. In Estonia, for example, with regard to the life event having a baby, an integrated approach has been enacted in order to enable parents, once they have declared the birth of their child, to automatically then receive a child allowance due to the interconnection of the public services. So what we have been doing over the course of the last year is also trying to think about how we can support countries better in developing a life event blueprint. And the aim of this blueprint is to be able to support in developing the life event approach. We have been able, yes.
Just a flag, maybe converging to the last 3 minutes, if possible.
Yes, yeah, I'm almost finished, Bruno, no problem. So what we have done is we have developed this life event blueprint, which is really there to guide the countries in identifying the different phases, the different steps, and the different actors that need to be mobilized when countries are thinking of integrating a life event approach into their national reforms. And so this is really there to guide countries in order to think about what exactly you need to put in place to be able to coordinate and enhance governance across different services. And here what we have done also is provided guidance with regard to what type of mechanisms should be put in place. And for the purposes of this, and we look forward to hearing the presentations from the high-level speakers, is really thinking one of the key enablers, which is establishing a robust governance mechanism. And so what we would like to do is really support with regard to enabling all countries to develop a life event approach that is adapted to their own national context. This has really just provided you with an example of a key approach that can be used for enhancing governance and coordination, but it is not the only one. And we look forward now to listening to other speakers to be able to hear of the examples that are being undertaken in countries as well as at European level to support enhanced governance and coordination. Thank you very much. And also, if you wish, you can also look at the results of the OECD Trust Survey through the QR code on the screen. Thank you, Bruno. Back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Emily. Thank you so much, Arnaud. Fresh out the press, the latest results of the OECD Drivers of Trust survey. I think there is a very important discussion to be held here, connecting, service delivery and government trust. It's not just about performance, even if performance, of course, is extremely important. It's not just about satisfaction, even if that's a very important lever for us to keep improving public services. It's about the trust that bonds together governments and citizens through these very important touch points that are public services. I am very pleased that Emily and I know you shared not just, I will say, very important insights about the cartography of governance mechanisms across OECD countries, but you also shared this very, I will say, actionable instrument for life events. And this is extremely important because, as you emphasize, the life events are a requirement, have as a requirement a strong governance, but in themselves, there are also drivers of strong governance across public services, integrating data, coordinating and bringing together different institutions to serve users through this approach based on their critical moments in life. I think this is also a good topic to hand it over to the Minister of Digitalization and Public Administration of Kosovo, Lulu Zamjakshu. Thank you so much for being with us. We are very much aware of the efforts that Kosovo has been promoting, not just, I will say, to take up the potential of technologies, but to put them to serve a purpose and to use that key purpose of serving better citizens, serving better businesses at the core of your strategies. With further ado, I will again thank you and invite you to take the
Thank you very much once again for having me. It's a great pleasure to be part of this webinar. So I have prepared a presentation. I will be talking about just one second, sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Just one second. Okay. So I will be talking about our digital transformation, digital government and service delivery journey. Of course, always very happy and proud to talk about this very important topic, which we have been driving in the last few years with much higher intensity than before. And of course, the focus today is to look at a very important angle of this transformation, and that has to do with governance and coordination, which are the key aspects related to implementation and execution. So when we started our journey a couple of years ago, we first thought about the strategic framework. So how do we really want to do this? And when we established our national development strategy in 2022, we were looking at 4 pillars. So the sustainable economic development, the human development, security and rule of law, and good governance. Of course, it was very clear that digital is a driver of all of these aspects of our national development strategy. So that's why we decided to build this horizontal agenda directly below our national development strategy, which would provide our strategic orientations not only for digital transformation in the government, but also digital transformation and fostering innovation more broadly within the country and within the economy. And then below that agenda, we built our specific strategies dealing with e-government, cybersecurity, digital transformation in specific sectors like health and education. And of course, when we talk about the vision, we all know that digitalization is not an end in itself. So the aim is about improving the well-being of Kosovo's citizens. It's about the effectiveness, transparency, and accountability of the public administration, and also it's about sustainable economic growth of the country. So when we developed our e-government strategy, we analyzed what are the key challenges we want to address. And it is no surprise that the first challenge we came up with was the aspect of coordination. Because over the years, Kosovo has built many digital systems, but each ministry and agency have built their own systems. And how do we make sure that we have a holistic approach to digital transformation, which provides value to citizens? And that's why when we designed our strategy, the first strategic objective was exactly about coordination, both at the strategic and operational level. The second aspect is people. of course, when we talk about digital, the first thing which comes to our minds is technology, but as we all know, it's not the most important thing. So that's why, as a second pillar of our strategy is how to make sure that we have the people with the necessary skills to make sure that we drive forward this digital transformation, but at the same time, our public administration has the skills to really and the competencies to use these digital systems and tools in their everyday work. And when we talk about the technological pillar, the focus has been and remains the whole of government approach. So how do we make sure that the systems have been built over the years communicate with each other and are part of a broader enterprise architecture? Of course, the government is here to serve the citizens, so the key pillar here is the one related to how do we improve services to our citizens by making them user-centric, more inclusive, but also to make sure that those services are actively used. And last but not least, knowing how rapidly the technology is evolving, it's very important that we have innovation also embedded inside our public administration. Of course, that's not easy because innovation does not come usually from the public sector. It comes from the private sector first and foremost. So that's why when we think about innovation, we think about how do we do that jointly together with the private sector, with the academia, and with all the stakeholders within the country. So I will talk a little bit about the key reforms which we have been working on under this strategic umbrella. So I would say the key denominator here, the key word is the whole of government approach. So how do we think about the digital transformation from the top level, and to make sure that we have systems which talk to each other and data is moving from one system and from one registry to another, and not people moving from one institution to another to be able to get services from the government. So over the years, we've built our interoperability platform with more than 50 services connected to it. But now we have started another important task, which is the next generation of interoperability platform, which will also be based on a new national interoperability framework, of course, compliant with the latest version of the European interoperability framework, both the one which is already in place, but also taking into account the new draft which has been circulated by the EU. Another aspect of this whole of government approach is data. So, and this has become even more important in the last few years with the emergence of large language models and the higher prominence of AI. So it is very important that we have this data infrastructure in place, which provides clear visibility and context of data which the government has. So that's why we've been investing on this metadata management platform to make sure that we are documenting and cataloging all the data and data structures which exist inside the government. And as I mentioned, this has multiple benefits, but in the modern era, this provides the context for deployment of AI, broad deployment of AI within the public administration. And when we talk about data, it's very important that we make sure that whatever public data, whatever data that the government has in possession is in public domain is also made open to the public. So in the past, we've had an open data platform, but now we have started a new project of going to the next stage to really make sure that we have open data by design, and make sure that every system has a classification of data, and to make sure that the data which are supposed to be shared with the public are shared in an easily accessible and machine readable formats, so that the private sector, the civil society, our citizens can create additional value out of those data. The second aspect is, of course, how do we provide services? And here, again, we're talking about the whole of government approach. So before 2021, there were initiatives to build, there have been initiatives to build portals by different institutions. And that was creating a lot of fragmentation because different institutions were creating ideas that they have to create their own portals. So that's why we started the e-Kosovo initiative in 2021, which is a centralized government portal for citizen and services for citizens and businesses. So what started small in 2021 today is now the key window for services for our citizens and businesses, with more than 320 services already available in the portal and 1.1 million registered users. So to give you a bit of a context, based on the most recent census of 2024, Kosovo currently has about 1.6 million resident population. And after the initial work on the web portal, we also launched the mobile application of eKosovo. And about 3 weeks ago, we already signed the new contract for what we call eKosovo 2.0. So this is the next generation of our portal, which will not only bring 400 additional services in the next 2.5 years, but also provide more modern functionalities, including with the ones based on and enabled by AI. Our vision and aim is to have 100% of administrative services digitalized by the end of the decade. But it's not only about the number of services which we make digital. And this is very much related to what was addressed by the previous speakers. And this is the flagship reform of our service delivery. And that's about transitioning to live event approach to service delivery. So the idea is to provide integrated, proactive and personalized services for our citizens. So to switch from a model where the administration itself is at the center towards a model where truly our citizens are at the center of service delivery. So this means breaking the silos between institutions, because all of our institutions have been established and they provide services based on their legal mandate and their responsibilities based on the law. And that's not the best way how the citizens would like to receive services. They want to receive services based on their own life circumstances, life events that they are dealing with, be that positive or not so positive life events. So again, I'm really happy with the work we've done. Last year, we launched the pilot of the childbirth live event, and I'm we've had the pleasure to cooperate with Nick and the Sigma team, which have helped us with guidance and some also reference cases from some other countries, which have helped our learning process in developing this I would say new approach and fundamentally different approach to service delivery. And this year we expanded that pilot to other cities as well, because initially we started with 2 cities. And now we have already signed a contract for 3 other clusters of live services for 3 live events, which is starting a business, moving home, and also death of a relative. I want to highlight here that when we talk about citizen centricity, it's not only about the end product, the services which need to be with the citizen at the center, but the whole process itself has to be citizen-centered. So engaging the citizens from the very beginning of the process, from the design through the design thinking process. And that's something which we have turned into a methodology which we are using in all of the cases of live events which we are implementing. Another point when it comes to service delivery, which is important part of our reform, is to make sure that we keep inclusivity in mind. So yes, of course, we are looking at digital first approach, but it's not digital only. We need to make sure that we are aware that there are always categories within our population who cannot take digital services on their own. So that's why we are at the same time pushing forward this aspect of the reform related to implementation of integrated service centers. So we have designed the first model of the integrated service center here in Pristina, and we are now starting the construction work. The idea will be that the citizens will be able to get services which are digital and some services which are still not fully digitalized but only have a digital backend with the support, of course, of a government official. And another important aspect is as we are becoming more and more digitalized in terms of service delivery, we need to make sure that we also provide the necessary support for our citizens, regardless of the channel they are using to take the services. So the contact center improvements and advancements is something which we have already started work on, designing the new concept, a new generation of our contact center for citizens. And that is going to be a very important aspect of reform going forward as well. And then another enabler is the digital identity. So yes, we have, of course, mechanisms of authentication put in place, but it's very important that we have a digital identity which fully and securely replicates the physical identity of our citizens in the digital world. So we adapted our law in 2021 and the secondary legislation in 2023, and we have already launched a pilot, a small pilot last year of our national eID platform, which brings together strong authentication, electronic signature, electronic seal, and digital wallet. And this year, in next few weeks, I believe we will be launching this platform in a broader scale for our citizens, because this is truly important for providing end-to-end digitalized services, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector as well. And
maybe, Mr. Minister,
yes.
I will kind of ask you to try to converge to, I will say, temporary conclusion for the moment, so we can still have Kjartan and also keep the time for our audience to make some questions, if possible.
How many minutes do I have so that I will wrap it up quickly?
I will say 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay. So it's not only about the services to citizens, it's also about internal processes. So there is this whole of government approach to bringing together and integrating internal services as well. And of course, working on the underlying infrastructure, both in terms of next generation of the government data network, transitioning to cloud, and making sure that we are doing that securely with cybersecurity considerations and the government SOC, which has been established. I already talked about innovation. We are putting a lot of emphasis on emerging technologies. And now we come to the important thing, and that is the governance and coordination. So when we established this strategic framework and we started doing work, we already identified the key institutions which will push forward this reform agenda, starting from the Agency of Information Society, which is the key agency within our government, and then the Kosovo Institute of Public Administration, Digital Transformation Unit, which we established within the Office of the Prime Minister a few years ago, and also combining that with the other departments. But again, the Prime Minister, in order to accelerate this process of digital transformation, established the role of a Chief Technology Officer in 2021, which was a role that I had at that time, with the idea of, I would say, coordinating the digital efforts at the center of the government of Kosovo. Again, we've managed to do a lot with this governance model, and all of the reforms which I mentioned a bit earlier are already in mature stage, and we already have a lot of concrete results, but still it was requiring a lot of energy because it was very much dependent on the soft power and I would say semi-executive power from the Office of the Prime Minister through the role of a Chief Technology Officer. And what we have since February of this year, when the new government was established, is the new ministry, which is the Ministry of Digitalization and Public Administration, which really brings all of these components together under one umbrella. So we have both digital transformation and public administration reform under one umbrella, which is very important because public administration today cannot be thought of without digital transformation, but at the same time, digital transformation without public administration reform is just moving the bureaucracy from paper to the screen. So it's not only about the transformation at a strategic level, we are also transforming the Agency of Information Society with new functions which did not exist before, like data governance and innovation, but also strengthening cybersecurity and support to other institutions. And this is under the umbrella of our brand of co-digit. Why do I mention this at this time? Co stands for Kosovo, so it's about digitalization of our country, but also stands for a Latin word of co, which despite the new ministry, which is this consolidated ministry dealing with digital transformation, it's not the ministry alone who will and is pushing the digital transformation. It requires joint work with other ministries, with the private sector, with the academia. Hence, co also stands for the Latin word co, which means together. So digital transformation is something which requires joint work of the whole government, but also broader actors within the society. So we are really happy with the progress. We've moved from Group C of countries within the GTMI index. We were part of Group C in 2020, and by 2025, we became part of Group A. And a very small example on the impact of a digital ministry, which we've had in the last 4 months. This is the World Bank project on digital governance. Of course, I don't want to oversimplify the success we've had even before the ministry, because the project was designed initially on analysis phase, and now we have moved to the implementation. But the rapid progress from December 25 to June 26, when the number of procurements in terms of funds utilized increased from 70% to 62% by the end of June, talks about the effectiveness of the new governance model. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister Luzon. We are very, very much glad to get a glimpse, not just of the results, but how those results were achieved. I think this brings not just an interesting example to be shared, but also important lessons that can be adapted, reused in other contexts. So thank you so much for sharing all these contributions. I personally appreciated precisely this holistic vision that brings together interoperability, data exchanges, electronic identity, one-stop shops, and live events, because these are different features of a common ecosystem that needs to be orchestrated and coordinated by the government. And I think that this is an important point to emphasize before handing it over to Kjartan Bjornsson, is that governments just need not just to change the narrative and talk about human-centered public services. They need to change their own internal structures if they want to stay able to commit to the expectations created with human-centered public services. I will hand it over immediately to Kjartan Bjornsson, that's the head of Unit of Governance and Public Administration at SG Reform in the European Commission. Great, huge privilege to have Kjartan today with us. The European Commission has been sharing important results on the satisfaction and the perceptions in general that both citizens and businesses have about public services. I will invite you to take a look at the April's edition of the Eurobarometer that were specifically dedicated to public services. And before handing it over, I will just emphasize that this is just more than just information and numbers, because the EC quality of public administration, the toolbox for practitioners, it's an important resource that you can find online. And that gives me the hint to mention that I've been sharing some resources in the chat. So take a look at the OECD recommendation on human-centered public administrative services. Take a look at the Sigma results on institutional setup in the EU enlargement administrations. And I will now share this toolbox before I'll hand it over to Kjartan. So Kjartan, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Before I start the presentation, which I think actually summarizes a lot of the things that the minister just highlighted, I want to congratulate him. So congratulate the minister. In my previous life, I worked in Kosovo for 4 years. I'm very impressed with what I just saw and heard, and I think it illustrates extremely well that by an intelligent strategic approach to public administration, you can leapfrog a lot of steps that others have gone through. So my congratulations to this. And allow me also another point. I was very pleased to hear you, Minister, praising the concrete work of Sigma, the advice that you get, because that's also in a previous life something I was very much insisting on, that we cannot just provide general generic advice. We have to be with you in the machine room and help you do the work better. So I was very touched by hearing also that there is very hands-on and specific advice offered to you from various colleagues, including here on Sigma. But let me now pass quickly, because I think we are running out of time. So this is really about what actually the minister said, getting data to move rather than getting people to move. So moving the, if you want, cost from people navigating very complex services to making sure the administration deals with this complexity. So we have been looking at the quality and user centricity now for the last year, and it informs the work that we do for the European semester. We have, Bruno already mentioned, so we have done a Eurobarometer survey about perception of the public services. We asked both businesses and we asked citizens. Then we did a comparative live event study that looked at the delivery of ID cards and business registrations. And we had bilateral discussions with the next with member states. So if we take the next slide, what we saw is that services are sadly very often designed around government instead of users. So when you look at this slide here, it shows that for ID delivery, we have broadly the same steps in all the 27 member states, but the internal systems and the processes, they differ. So delivery times, they range from 5 to 30 days. That's quite an enormous difference for something which is relatively straightforward. The other thing that we saw is that the use of pre-filled forms, so the respecting the one's only principles, it ranges from only 5% in the worst member state to 100% in the best ones. So people are simply asked again and again to provide the information that is already available with the administration. Now, does it mean then that digitalization does not help? No, that's not so. If you go to the next slide, we clearly see a link between on the horizontal axis, the e-governance benchmark. We can see that the more digital services you offer, the higher satisfaction of citizens. So that's very good. We see that both for businesses and we see it for citizens. But if we move to the next slide, and I'm just checking here on the screen, yeah, you can see that sadly there is no link necessarily between more digital, higher digital availability and real outcome for citizens. And in this case, what we have looked at is we have made a proxy for a real outcome by looking at the number of extra contacts. So did you have to get in touch with the administration more than you had anticipated? And we can see here that we are not noticing a significant link between digitalization on the horizontal axis and how often that you actually have to engage more than you had expected with your administration. So for us, the conclusion is that while users are more satisfied when services are digitally available, they do not necessarily find the services simpler or easier to use.
And this is because the service don't make more sense than it did before. And in a way, the minister said it, some digitalization of bureaucracy has taken place. So broken processes going digital are still broken processes. And we see that some member states that score very well on the e-government benchmark, they deliver less than half of the ID card steps online. And that means that they haven't had a whole of government approach. They haven't tried to get the process fully digitalized in a meaningful way. If we move to the next slide, one could be a bit provocative here and say that we have digitalized the front end, so the door, but the back end remains unchanged. And we need to go beyond just looking at digital availability. So the first sort of conclusion you could see here is that speed is not service. We have one example where in a member state it's possible to do business registration in less than an hour, but just about a third of the people are satisfied with the service. So the transactions have been optimized to a degree, but the whole journey has not been coordinated. Second, simpler is better. So some digital services, they show us a lower user satisfaction than the same service on site. And a broken digital journey is worse than working on site. So we also see lack of clarity. So 1 in 3 citizens find finding the right service time consuming. So we're not straightforward with our services. And only 5 out of 27 member states allow tracking for ID card applications status. And that is despite, so only 5 out of 27, that's despite that over half of the citizens say that that would be something that would encourage them to use the services more. And nobody has a what we call a cross-agency view, or if you like, a whole of government approach. So as the minister also said, it's about digital first, but not digital only. We have to make sure that there is an on-site channel for those that have particular challenges. So if we move to the next slide, we see that there is a clear correlation here between the citizens' satisfaction and repeated data requests. So the more repeat data requests, the less satisfaction people have. So we need to make sure that the once-only principle is not just a principle, but becomes practice as routine for the administration. So data reuse varies across member states and per life event. And it doesn't actually depend on the level of digitalization of the member state. So it's not a technology problem. Member states, they do have the technical infrastructure, but they don't always have the necessary interoperability layer. Interoperability layer, of course, is a bridge or a translation hub between systems, or if you want, data sharing agreements. So there is a tendency to see each administration in the chain optimizing locally because there is no accountability for the entire service. And that reduces the overall value for the users. And I will just provoke here a little bit, saying that this is something we've all seen. For instance, when I have to log on an OECD platform for registering for a meeting, I give my credentials so they know who I am. And the first thing they ask me is give my name and email afterwards. Now, that's not a big deal, but if you add that up millions and millions of times, of course, it adds a lot of frustrations and therefore lack of trust. But it also for businesses means that higher cost, and that is lost opportunity. So if you go to the next slide, please. These are what the businesses are saying about the cost of not coordinating. So we can see that many of them, 30% indicate higher costs, 36% are indicating that they have higher delays. And these are not really service failures in our view, but they are coordination failures, and that is something that we need to fix. If we move to the next slide, please. So we just have some elements here that we've looked at some cost linked to fragmentation, and in the EU alone, we would be probably able to save about 64 billion a year. And we also see that we have an example from Cyprus. I just want to say that when you try to, for instance, build a better multi-level governance with the permitting, you see that the system is able to process nearly 3 times as many building permits as they were before. And how did they do that? Well, they transferred authority for planning and building permits from individual municipalities to 5 newly established local or district local government organizations. They streamlined a fragmented system of over 30 authorities to only 5, and they created a standard digital process. So they had a single digital platform for development permits, and they have statutory deadlines. I think this is an example of a very successful reform that we could take inspiration from. So I was going to talk a little bit more about permitting, but I will drop this here and I will finish my presentation therefore on this note. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kjartan, and thank you so much for your consideration with time. In any case, if possible, we will share all the presentations used today. This will give us another chance of sharing questions and approaching the speakers after the event. As mentioned, we are very keen into sharing the experiences between us and keep this conversation going. If you want to take a look at the webinar series as a whole, please do that in the chat. We have the link for that. So we received some questions, and I would like very much to go into that part. It's one of the most exciting moments when we get this engagement of participants. I will tweak some questions to make them more general, so more speakers can intervene. So we have a first question that I think is extremely important about how to empower public servants, how to train the staff, how to build the capacities ready. I think all of the speakers mentioned the importance of people and having the right capacities in place. So my questions for one of the first questions we have, and it's a question coming from someone that knows very well how to build responsive digital services in Armenia. It's precisely about how can you put in place the right staff with the right skills for the new contact centers, for the new one-stop shops, for these changes that we need to have in place. So I will let you think a little bit. I imagine this will be primarily targeting the experience of Kosovo. Then we have a second question about the current and existing approaches in terms of legal and institutional frameworks for governing with AI. So how is the use of artificial intelligence being not just used on services, but being approached from the governance angle? And then there is something I think more targeting the experience of Kjartan. It's something that Kjartan mentioned that I think it's extremely important, and it's a bit counterintuitive, is that speed is not service. That means that citizens, of course, they want faster, easier services, but they also want other things. And that's about the other things that we need to have in place that I'm going to invite Kjartan to tell us about. So I don't know who wants to start, but we have 3 questions. You feel free to answer all of them or just pick the one that you feel more adjusts to your case.
Well, maybe I can start with.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So basically, of course, as I mentioned earlier, what makes or breaks any kind of reform or whatever we are doing is people. So that's the key element, but also the key challenge. So how do we make sure that we have the necessary skilled people, ICT professionals who deal with these systems and bring them to life, but also the civil servants who have the necessary skills to use these tools. So in the past, we've had a lot of fragmented trainings and capacity building efforts. So what we did now is we build what we call a digital capacities building framework, which looks at three categories. So first is what kind of capacities and competencies do the professionals, ICT professionals need to have, digital professionals? What kind of capacities do civil servants need to have, and what kind of capacities do the management layers inside the public administration need to have in order to initiate these digital projects, but being able also to manage them. Also, you mentioned the integrated service centers. That was a debate when we designed our concept of integrated service center. So how do we stop that? Do we have people from our ministry only, or is it also people coming from ministries, other ministries who own those services? So what we eventually decided is that it's going to be, I would say, a combined structure of some front-end people who are more generalists within the integrated service center, which provide simpler services, and then the more complex services, which have both the front-end people and the back-end people, and then it combines people who have some general, I would say, skills to provide services, but you have the back-end people who have specific and specialized knowledge about services. So not to take the whole time, I will stop here, and I can provide feedback on other questions as well later.
Thank you so much, Minister. I think you point to two very important contributions about how to redesign training and the capacities framework, and also how to reorganize the services so staff can be equipped to the needs of each step when users are approaching services. I don't know, Emily, Arnaud, if you want to step in and share also the very fresh results from the Digital Government Outlook on the use of AI for services, including legal frameworks and governance structures. And Kjartan, I will leave you thinking and stepping in whenever you want.
Yes, sure. A couple of reflections that will connect the different questions that you bring. And thank you, Minister and Kjartan. I think a lot of your points in your presentation were excellent, and I wish I had done them myself. I think if I move away from the points on training that the Minister has already very well covered, I think there is a need for probably complementary approaches to its improvements of public services that will bring together different parts of the administration. Let me start from the most basic to the most sophisticated. If I start with the most basic, it's very important to have an agreed baseline of the performance, the indicators, the satisfaction in the country, so that the administration can work on an agreed diagnostic, I would say, of what are the priorities, what are the barriers, what are the obstacles. Too often we see ministries having different figures, and it's quite important to have this alignment on the priorities. So using really basic tools from national surveys to more sophisticated one like integrating indicators and dashboards. A second element is using a lot of this feedback is simply bringing the administration and the users together around some priority services. So really having this connection not only at the I would say political level, but also at the technical level and on very concrete services. I know a number of us, including you, Bruno, has been working on these co-design workshops, simplifying services, finding sometimes things that are not extremely complex, but that can consist in like removing steps, exchanging more information with the administrations, etc. Now, if I move to a more sophisticated end, and then I will hand over also to Emily, I think the possibilities that AI is bringing us might be decisive in making the changes that have been, in which, like I would say, administration have been stuck for a long time. Like Kjartan, I have a passion for the once only principle. What you can see is that in almost all OECD member countries, it's part of a strategy of the objectives of the administration to implement this principle. How many countries have properly implemented it? Here I'll pass not to have enemies. And I think this is an area where, for instance, AI can help collect the data, especially if we move towards agentic AI, collect the data across the administration and bring it to the administration after the user has communicated once. So having agents that will go and that will pre-fill applications, pre-fill and reach out to citizens even before they ask for the benefit of the application, simply because they experience an event or they had a touch point with the administration. Of course, there are a number of barriers, controls that are very important to put along the way. But I think this is, to me, since you ask about AI, definitely an area of development that we see increasing. And indeed, AI is the, well, or the use of AI in public services is the number one use of AI right now. We recently did a call for AI use in government, and that was the number one use. I'll stop here because I see again Emilie and Karatan have raised their hands. So please.
Thanks, Arnold. Maybe if I can just compliment a little bit with some recent data that we published a few weeks ago. So we have been working over the last year on a number of different data points with regard to governing with AI and the use of AI in public services. So a few weeks ago, we launched the Digital Government Outlook, which looked at how AI has been used and adopted across the public sector within OECD countries. And so there we find that around 70% of OECD countries are using AI in order to improve internal operations, such as staff support, administrative processes, etc. And 67% are using it in order to support their delivery of service, which is obviously a high proportion of OECD countries. However, there has been, of course, this focus when we think about how AI has so rapidly evolved on how exactly administrations need to ensure that the right governance is in place. So as you recall, during our presentation, we presented a few examples of what types of coordination and governance mechanisms have been put in place for public services. And what we have seen through our Governing with AI report that was published in 2025 is that some similar types of governance structures are being put in place in order to strengthen the governance of AI across different administrations. So this includes, for instance, putting in place AI offices and supervisory bodies, as well as putting in place governance boards for AI across the different administrations within the government. And there are a few examples coming, for instance, from Spain, where there is an AI supervisory agency, as well as in Australia, where there is an AI in government task force. And then the other aspects that are being put in place relate to putting ethical frameworks and guidance across public servants in order to make sure that the right standards are being applied for the use of AI. So those are a few examples just to supplement what Arnaud says about how exactly the AI is being governed across different countries.
Thank you so much, Emily. Kjartan, please.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to, I mean, two things. The first one about speed is not a service. I think illustrate this by going on a skiing holiday in your own car. It requires quite a lot of effort. You might actually spend the same time or even faster than going to the same journey by a train where you arrive relaxed. It's a little bit the same thing. So you might actually earn more time, but you are exhausted in the process. And I think it's a little bit the same here with public services. People want clarity of navigation. They want that things are easy to find, that they are easy to understand, and that they don't have to be bothered again and again providing the same information. It's very rare that you have something that is super urgent. It happens, and then you have emergency services for this or speed up processes. But what you need is clarity by when do I get it? It's next week, next month, whatever. You know when you're going to get it, but whether you're getting it tomorrow or next week for most services doesn't really matter. And I think that's the conclusion that we have drawn. So it's much better to focus on making things simple. So put ourselves in the shoes of the users. making sure that we really do the journey for them so that they can navigate this in a way that is easy for them to understand and they feel comfortable about the process. And then let them track the progress and let them see how, let them get a very clear deadline. Now, can I just give you one a little bit anecdotal level? So I'm sorry, but I was just in Copenhagen over a long weekend here, and I met the head of the Planning and Rural Development Agency, and it's completely by chance. But they have developed an AI tool that can now do the environmental assessment, for instance, for data centers or for renewable energy projects. They can do this completely by using AI. So they just upload the maps of the project that they have in mind, and then the tool will fill in all the elements you have to do. This used to take 8 months or so and cost 60, 70, even for smaller projects, 60 to 70,000 euros in consultancy fees. And just to give you scale, they said that there are about 15 or 20,000 of such processes in the public sector alone. So this is huge. And if you can move from not being dependent on paying a big fee to a consultancy, but you can actually get at least a very good first draft of this assessment by using AI, I think then we are really well off. So this is an example we will also try to promote more widely in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kjartan. Let me thanks again to our OECD colleagues. Arnaud, Emily, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks for bringing such practical approaches to the fore. I'm pretty sure our audience will appreciate that. Thank you so much to the Minister Luzam, Jack Shu. Thank you so much for sharing the work being done in Kosovo. There was a lot of messages of praise and that we will for sure share afterwards. So we also look forward for the continued collaboration with Sigma. And last but not least, thank you so much, Kjartan. I think you finished it with a great way by demonstrating the value that leveraging these opportunities that we are being given in technology and organizational redesign can mean in such demanding times like the ones we live now. Before closing, I want to acknowledge that we received other questions, in particular from Peter Mathiesen, a very interesting question about organizational changes, another one from Kaido Palsbusk about interoperability. But given the time, I will instead invite you to answer the feedback form we prepared with the promise that all the questions we received will be answered. So we will be providing some answers by written form to the questions that we could not address during the session. As a compensation, maybe you can join the next webinars. As I said, this is a series. And it is a series not only of disconnected topics, but it's a series that intends to create this organic life among us across borders. Many of the topics are interrelated. So in the future, if you are interested in digital wallets or electronic identity solutions, you will find a webinar to discuss that. If you are way more into the use of AI into public services, we are planning another webinar on that. So all of these topics will come together nicely at the end of the webinar series, we hope. So please register, keep tuned stay tuned in the series, and let us know your feedback constantly so we can improve. Thank you again for everyone on the other side for joining today, for staying with us for these 90 minutes. Many thanks to our speakers once again. We will stay working together in the coming times. Thanks also to the DGNS colleagues because they don't let us walk alone. So very much appreciated, Elena and Basil. Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks to participants.
Thank you.